of speeches from President Hakainde Hichilema without action. For clarity on these concerns and the questions, I have been joined on set, of course, a delegation coming from State House, and of course, his name, of course, to start with, his name is a Special Assistant for, what is your correct position, Mr. Bwalya?
I was waiting for that. That's a bizarre way to begin our conversation. But look, I speak for the president.
Right.
I speak for the president. That's my principal occupation. Anything and everything else around it is really incidental. But my key area of focus is I speak for the president.
My script is blank here. Not even my producer really couldn't finish because we want to know: are you the presidential spokesperson only, or special assistant for press and public relations? Which one?
I don't know what difference it makes. I speak for the president, and that is my principal occupation.
Right. So for the sake of this conversation, how should I address you going forward?
You can address me as presidential spokesperson.
Thank you so much. So I'm joined by Mr. Bwalya, who happens to be the presidential spokesperson. And also, besides him, we've also been joined by Dr. Roma Chilengi, who happens to be President Hakainde Hichilema's COVID advisor. Doc, welcome to this special interview.
Thank you so much, and good evening, viewers.
I'm surprised I'm not grilling him about what his title is.
At least his is not complicated. We have never heard anything complicated about it.
We just call him, we call him Mr. COVID in State House.
COVID.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Well, I think we need to settle this conversation.
Yeah.
We are all special assistants to the president. That's
Right.
the official title. We are special assistants to the president with different areas of focus.
That's him trying to run away from being called Mr. COVID.
Dr. COVID, welcome to the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, let's begin, of course, from, you've just made a few trips. Of course, the first trip was in Northern Province with the president, where you went to lay wreaths on the presidential burial sites of some of our foreign heroes. These Simon Mwansagapoepo, among others. Just tell us what was the significance of that trip? Let's begin from there before we get into other issues.
Thank you, very important. Thank you very much indeed, Innocent, and it's a very good evening to our viewers and all those who are following and maybe following this discussion on the digital platform. Let me just be very clear from the onset, because I heard in your introduction that there are quarters of the population that seem to hold the view that the new administration is an administration of speeches. I want to be categorical that this president that you have elected, you will hear him every day. He emphasizes that he is all about deliverables. Deliverables, deliverables, deliverables. It is all about results. We were elected on the premise that we shall and that we will deliver results for the Zambian people. And to highlight that, let me just go through a few things around which we made some rather strong commitments and pronouncements over the course of the campaign. And as at yet, you can confirm, and the Zambian people can confirm, that we have made a huge amount of progress in the way of delivering on those commitments. So number one, we had said, and the Zambian people were absolutely livid about what had become a toxic culture of cadreism in our marketplaces and bus stations and many public places, where politically affiliated individuals of the previous regime were harassing innocent members of the public, extorting money out of them as a way of earning a living. We said we're going to put an end to that. And today, by Innocent, abena Zambia balife bonse muno mu Lusaka ilelo kutimwaya mu intercity nangu mu Kisokone nangu any other market or bus station in Lusaka, without being harassed or feeling that you owe your life in those public spaces to any single individual. We made it very clear that all of those public spaces were to be returned under the control of local councils. And we have just absolutely done that. Today those places are under the control of councils who are collecting revenue And those revenues now we expect, sensibly, that they can now be applied by the council towards improving the quality of service delivery, public service delivery, in markets, bus stations, and in the places where people live. We said that we would return to the rule of law, and we have done that. Today, by innocence, the President has always emphasized that all law enforcement agencies, they needed to function and operate independently. We can give an example of the police, where the President made it very clear that they should never have to arrest any single individual without ever establishing a probable cause around a crime. You remember we are coming from a history where people could be arrested, detained, maliciously prosecuted. The President himself and many individuals, myself included.
We are one of the victims.
Absolutely. But the focus is not on ourselves. It is generally on the Zambian people and creating a society that is anchored, underpinned and governed by the rule of law. We believe we have delivered on on that. Roma here has been appointed by the President as special advisor for COVID, because we had recognized then, and we still recognize now, that COVID is a huge impediment to our hopes to rebuild, reconstruct, this economy, so that we can begin to deliver new opportunities for our people, economically, socially, in the health sector, and so on and so forth. We said we would appoint a COVID advisor. The President has done so, and Dr. Chilengi here has been doing an incredible amount of work, and one hell of an incredible job, working and collaborating with a host of partners at the Ministry of Health, in international circles, making sure that we get all the critical works done insofar as responding to COVID is concerned. And we've responded to that. So we are not just all about making speeches and making commitments. The President has been very clear, and he continues to be very clear. We were not elected on the basis of those commitments. We were elected on the basis that we would make good on those commitments. And what we want to continue to say to the Zambian people is that the same way that we have followed through on some of the commitments that we made and we have highlighted is precisely the same way that the President and this administration continues to tell the Zambian people, you can trust us. You can believe that we'll follow through on the big, even bigger commitments that we have made. Now, coming to your initial question about our trip to Chinsali, the President again has always been very clear that we were elected on two fundamental premises. Number one, that we would reunite the country. The country had become polarized. Our politics had become toxic. Our politics had become divisive. They had become deadly and bloody and regionalized. And the President was saying, we cannot rebuild a country that was divided. And the country was being divided by politicians who thought they could anchor their continued stay in power on dividing this country and its people. We said no then, and we still continue to say now. And part of our trip to the north, the President is saying, number one, we are one people. It doesn't matter where one came from. Those who fought for this country's independence, then, now, and in the future, they did it not for one region. They did it because every Zambian, whichever tribe you are, whichever part of the country you hail from and live in, we all deserved to live in an independent country where both economic and political choices were available, and equitably so, to all of us. That is why people like Simon Mwanseka Pwepwe, Harry Mwanga Nkumbula, and many others who fought for this country's independence did so under such massive and great expense to themselves and their families. So the President went to Chinsali to say that we thank those men and women and their families for the incredible work that they did to deliver this country's economic independence. Of course, now this generation of leaders has a monumental task of delivering on the promise of economic independence. But we must thank those brave men and women for what they did. And the President took it upon himself to travel to Chinsali to go and pay his respects to one Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe. Alongside, he rests his beloved wife, Mama Salome Kapwepwe. Of course, you have to recognize that when a man is fighting, battles, his family is also fighting with him. Those women and their families, they sacrificed a lot to make sure that the Harry Mwanga Nkumbulas, the Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe, the Kenneth Kaunda, and many others were available to this country and its people to deliver that independence. So it was about peace. It was about unifying the country and sending the message that we cannot begin to sensibly rebuild this country if we do not unite as one people and forge ahead together.
Thank you so much. For the sake of this conversation, I'll try to maybe moving forward to restrict Mr. Bwalya, because I know that he can speak for 1 hour alone. So I'll be very strict on his side each time he starts speaking, to about maybe 3 minutes.
I won't respond to that.
Each time I ask a question. Let me just unveil, Doc, were you part and parcel of this trip?
No.
All right.
The trip to the north? No, I wasn't.
All right. Why I ask this question, I wanted to find out in terms of the COVID component on that aspect, because I know that each trip that is taken by the president, if you are going to be part and parcel, yours will just be looking at the health of the people in that area vis-a-vis the COVID-19. And I wanted to force myself to find out in terms of how is the compliance levels among the people of northern province with regards to the pandemic that we have right now.
Thanks.
Before you add on whatever
it's an important question.
Yeah.
I think you recognize that the purpose of the trip the president made was much more around independence celebration and recognizing the freedom fighters. And so that was a very specific and dedicated trip. And so the rest of us remained in Lusaka to focus on other activities. The people of Northern Province, like the rest of the Zambians countrywide, in my considered opinion, could do better in terms of compliance to the golden rules, which we are talking about: social distancing, masking up, sanitizing. While the general restrictions countrywide have been eased, I think you only have to go to a marketplace, you have to get on a bus, you will find that people are not really masking up as they should or social distancing as they should. These are important interventions, but this is why we know that really the angle of prevention of COVID, which pushes the vaccination forward, is very critical, because in that approach you will interact with a person and vaccinate them, and off they go. They have something to protect themselves and to protect others. And so I think I wouldn't single out the people of Northern Province. I would talk about the Zambian people in general, because the picture is pretty much the same. Yeah.
All right. Furthermore, on that aspect, I think personally I was in Chinsali some 4 or 5 months ago, and what I did notice there was that the compliance levels, I think, is as poor as in other areas. Like you've mentioned Lusaka as well, who are finding challenges. I'm glad that you're putting on masks right now. But the story, if you go on the ground, is quite different, and we've got an administration that really, when you were in the opposition, Mr. Bwalya, you did really promise the people of Zambia that things can be done better.
Yeah.
And when we form government as UPND, we are going to ensure that we act accordingly.
Yeah.
What changes have we made so far, or maybe have we made so far? Then he has to finish up, because he's in charge of the COVID situation.
Yeah. So let me just make it very, very clear. The push against COVID-19, the desire for this administration, and especially the president, for us to win the fight against COVID-19, absolutely clear that Zambia cannot afford another shutdown of the economy. We can't afford it. We have already paid a huge amount of a price. Off the top of my head, I think this country has probably lost something within the region of $5 to $6 billion in economic costs because of COVID. It's massive. I mean, I would love people who do the numbers to tell us. It's massive. We can't afford it. So the president, in keeping through with that commitment, he was very quick in making sure that we had an expert in State House, making sure that we stayed high and on top of COVID and everything COVID related, making sure that our response mechanisms were robust and timely as a way of keeping this country and its people safe and open for business. And I think I need to make way for Roma here, because he's been quite on the forefront in devising initiatives, working with others, making sure that we respond to COVID the right way.
Let me just make a way for you, Doc, to my question. My question remained the same. I did talked about the poor compliance levels among the people of Zambia, and the Chinsali is not an exception as well.
Yeah.
You know, and you are a man now in charge that, of course, is advising the president. You remember that during the PF government, we had these COVID-19 restrictions, very tight, you know, and Bali comes in with your with that advice coming from you. You've decided to lessen or to loosen the restrictions. What more would you want people to go in terms of complying to these levels? Don't you think maybe it could cause more havoc or problems?
Yeah, thanks. That's an important question. And I think we need to approach it very logically.
Right.
Here's how it works. Restrictions are never desirable to any government. For reasons my colleague has just been talking about, shuts a country down. Nobody wants that. Right. It is only in extreme situations where I think the easier way to put it is when the country is at war. It's like a state of emergency. You then have to take certain measures, painful as they might be, because people are dying and you don't want people to continue dying. And so in terms of infectious diseases, which are moving from one person to another, you then have to separate those people. Where there's an infection in the house, you want it to stay in the house as you deal with it. That's why the extreme restrictions. Okay, so when and COVID is a disease which typically comes like an epidemic. And what epidemics do, they come very quickly, the numbers rise, and then it falls down and goes away, usually goes away even by itself. Okay. Unfortunately for COVID, it's one infectious disease which is coming in waves, and the waves are close together. So the first wave sweeps through, it goes away, another wave comes. And so when you have caused restrictions because the epidemic is on the rise, surely you have to be responsible enough when the epidemic is on the decline to ease those restrictions. We are mindful that there is still some transmission. We're still having positivity cases of under 1% for the last over 2 weeks. I think yesterday's was 0.2%. It's a very small proportion, but important nonetheless, telling us there's still some transmission going on. But really, by any measure, you are now in a frame where you can ease up and people can begin to have some semblance of a normal life. If you maintain those restrictions now that you're having 0.2%, what will happen when you get 20%? So anyway, that's on a light note, but the point really is that the conditions are right, that when you ease the restrictions, the infection is going down, so it's not going to cause a havoc up until maybe you get a new wave, which scientifically we expect that there might be a new wave. And so when that new wave comes, depending on the thresholds that you set up, once those are met, then you may have to institute restrictions again. But I think people will respect their leaders if they recognize that when things are okay, the leaders do the right things. When things are bad, the leaders make tough decisions in the interest of everybody else. So the atmosphere is right. As you recall, June, July, UTH morgue was full for the first time. The mortuary is full because there's too much death happening. That's not the case now, and therefore it's appropriate that people enjoy their liberties and their freedom. But it's extremely important because we are expecting another wave of this pandemic. Therefore, we need to prepare ourselves so that when this fourth wave comes, it doesn't find us in the same place the second and the third wave found us. And therefore, you saw the president working very hard, firstly in the background, because he knows what do we need to prepare ourselves. We need more resources. We need to vaccinate our people. And these things don't grow on trees. So he put up a big effort to negotiate internationally to get support, to negotiate internationally to get vaccines coming to Zambia. And on that front, again, I think that it's not been just talk. The vaccines are coming in. And at the moment, we have enough vaccines than we are consuming. And in fact, the president has said the only problem I want to hear is that we are running out of vaccine because we are vaccinating a lot. All right? So, and you heard yourself some of the targets that he has set for us. But besides that, he also recognized that really the lack of preparedness during the second, third wave was also because of lack of political will. And he is determined to give that, and I'm sure you can tell from most of the president's actions and speeches, he doesn't leave out the importance of dealing with COVID and preparing ourselves, which is why on the 7th of October, he put up a national launch that saw leadership structures from civic leaders, from religious leaders, traditional leaders, and various levels of our society coming in and beginning to take vaccinations, because the numbers we had were trivial. And he was providing leadership, saying, I'm vaccinated myself, my family is vaccinated. Can you all leaders ensure that you do the same? And so following that national launch, we now have provincial launches which have happened, and we are now getting to districts and constituency launches. So in Chinsali, which is the area we are talking about, we anticipate to have a district launch soon, because the provincial launch has been done already in Muchinga. So we anticipate to have a district launch there, and those activities should lift up the numbers of people vaccinated. What I'm saying to your original question is that the lifting of restrictions is to give people a sense of normal life. And while they are having that normal life, can we prepare so that should the fourth wave come, it doesn't hit us badly? And just to qualify, the lifting of the restrictions, by the way, was clearly that we'll lift for a month and observe, review, and see whether we'll continue or whether we make it even lighter or we tighten a little. So you will be getting the Ministry of Health giving a review at an appropriate time of how the situation has been with the lifting. But I think it's going okay at the moment, given the numbers of COVID cases.
And let me just ride on what Dr. Chilengi here has said, and this is very, very important. The fact that restrictions have been eased on account that the infection rate has dissipated a little bit does not mean that the risk of COVID has gone away. It hasn't. What these 4 in the infection rate has done, and what the easing of restrictions also has done, is that it has given us a window of opportunity.
Yeah.
A window of opportunity for us to prepare ourselves as a country for when and if that predicted fourth wave does strike. If we don't prepare ourselves by means and by way of getting ourselves vaccinated, I'm not being a scaremonger, I will tell you what's going to happen. Two things. Number one, many of us are going to die. I'm not scaremongering. Many of us are going to die. Because if we don't prepare ourselves, we will die. People have died before, and some of us might die. We don't want that. Second of all, this economy again will fall flat on its face. And we are going to jeopardize every opportunity that we have now of rebuilding this economy, create jobs, create better incomes, and basically keep our people's heads well above the water. We don't need to jeopardize that. Vaccines have been shown to work. They do work. The onset to the what Fidamo batimo bola mutambanga mova manu Fidaba Minyankwide 5-0. But weekend Fidamo Tamba. I know there was a lot of people watching there and cheering in those stadiums. Those crowds that you see when you're watching the EPL in those stadiums, they're not just by accident. It's because, number one, governments recognized the importance of getting their populations vaccinated. And number two, people they took personal responsibility. They went out and they got vaccinated. It is beautiful now, sitting at home, watching football with a stadium packed full to capacity. They do work. That is a sign.
Those people have been vaccinated.
They have been vaccinated. Okay, they've been vaccinated. Yeah. Absolutely, because in countries like that, you will not get into a football stadium when you don't have your vaccination certificate. In the US, where we had traveled with the president, to walk into a restaurant, you need to show that you're vaccinated. Yeah. To get on public transportation, you need to show that you're vaccinated. Even across the border here in Zimbabwe, who are vaccinated a little more than 10 million people, whereas we're nowhere near that. Yeah. Even in Zimbabwe now, for you to walk into a restaurant, you have to show that you're vaccinated. Now, that is people in countries taking personal and national responsibility for the fight against COVID. This is a fight we must win. We don't have an option. Now, we are not at a point where we have to start asking our citizens, innocent, we share vaccination certificates, what we're emphasizing right now is, can we take personal responsibility as individuals, as families, as churches, as institutions of our learning? We know at the University of Zambia, they've lost 24 critical staff members to COVID. How do you replace critical resource like lecturers? How much money and time does it take to train a lecturer? Now you are losing 24 as UNZA. How do you replace that? Let us go out and get vaccinated. Students, they have lost time on their academic calendars. Graduate several months ago. They are still in school now. They remember that pain. Go out and get vaccinated. Ama churches, we know they were closed. Go out and get vaccinated. We all remember the disruption. So, when the president says we have to take the fight against COVID seriously, it is that serious. As we are talking right now, the president is preparing to leave the country for COP26 in Glasgow, in Scotland. And I bet you, whereas top on the agenda, it will be issues of climate change, I want to assure you that on the sidelines, global leaders will be having discussions around how to help countries like Zambia pace up our response mechanisms against COVID-19. And we are going to win. Not just those conversations, but substantively, we'll get more vaccines in. And now we're urging the Zambian people to trust the president and his administration. Let us go out and get vaccinated and build enough of a buffer so that when and if that fourth wave does strike, as these scientists are predicting, we'll be warm and dry. The economy will be back up, will still open, will be up and running. In the cases, we expect that they should not be anything as damaging as they were over the course of the second and third waves.
I want us to get away from this COVID topic to something else. But
so soon.
I think this is very important. Just pushing 2 or 3 questions in that regard. You did mention, Doc, that the president has demonstrated at his level as the #1 citizen of this country, together with the entire family that have been vaccinated. And some 3 weeks ago, we did witness the relaunch of the COVID vaccination to the people of Zambia. Now, the challenge that comes in, Doc, as well as Mr. Bwalya, is that, and according to our survey from the media aspect, is that we do not have enough vaccines in this country, more especially the rural part of this nation. And part of the rural area is the Chinsali, where you are just coming from, where the head of state is coming from. You know, it appears that government has only concentrated in the urban places. What are you doing? What is your government doing to ensure that our people in the rural places, they have got these vaccines? Because remember, we did lose a lot of people in the third wave. You know, what will happen next? Remember the issue of bed spaces as well. It was among the contributing factors that led people dying.
Absolutely.
You know, we talk about lack of oxygen supply as well. Largely contributed. What is the new Dawn administration doing? I remember he is a politician, Mr. Bwalya, here, and now speaking on behalf of a #1 politician by the name of President HICHILEMA, in which during his time in the opposition, he was very magnanimous enough to point out, say, if we were in power today, we're going to have a total lockdown. He did criticize the then government. Should we cross over from where we are in terms of the levels, the positivities that we have? Can we go for a total lockdown under your administration?
Well, I think that our job is to advise the authorities based on the best scientific opinions given the reality. So if the situation demanded a total lockdown from a scientific point of view, then that would be the advice that would give, because that's our job, to advise the president. However, what we are saying is that we know enough today, and we have enough tools today to prepare a mitigation strategy, so that at the very worst, this thing comes hard at us, it doesn't bring us down to our knees. It can knock on us, but it must not bring us down anywhere close to a total lockdown. And this is part of really my mandate, is to make sure we prepare the country sufficiently to mitigate against that. Now, that said, I think the question of whether we have enough vaccines or not must be put to rest. We do have enough vaccines in the country, and these vaccines have been distributed to all provinces. They've been distributed to all major health facilities, and we do have the list of facilities where you can go there and you'll find the vaccine. Now, the vaccine is stored at a given temperature, and not all facilities have the refrigerations to store the vaccine in good quantities at that temperature, and therefore they have hubs where they will access their vaccine depending on their projected use. Okay? So there isn't a district in Zambia today where there is no vaccine. There isn't a district. There is vaccine everywhere, and in the past week you televised us receiving another 330,000 doses of a vaccine, and at that point we still had about 150,000 doses of vaccine in country, and so the pace at which we are vaccinating is way lower than, you know, the numbers of vaccines we have today. If we increased our vaccination rate by 100-fold, we will still have vaccine flowing to vaccinate people. And I think this is a call to the public out there, that please go and get vaccinated. These vaccines, the government has gone to great length to negotiate for them under very difficult circumstances, provided them for free. I think the least you can do is make the effort to take yourself, get vaccinated. You will not just be protecting yourself, you'll be protecting those around you. And this is very important. So we do have vaccines, Mr. Innocent, and there are more coming.
Yeah, but also let me just mention talking about the availability of vaccines, you will know that the vast majority, if not all of the vaccines that we have at the moment, I want to believe that they have been donated. I don't know whether, I'm not sure, I'm not able to...
No, we've made some payments.
Okay. Yeah, but I think, broadly speaking, we have benefited as a country from the generosity of our friends around the world, and that is fantastic. But what the president always says is that, look, we have to be sensible enough. Before we call on our friends to say, colleagues, can you help us here because we are struggling, we have to be able to demonstrate, both to ourselves and our people here at home, but also our friends in international circles, that we are making the right kind of efforts in making sure that we prudently manage the resources that we have as a country in so many areas. Because only if and when we manage our resources as prudently as we ought to, will we be able then to reach a stage that we're going to have X amount of money designated to the procurement of, of vaccines. Only then can we then be able to say that this amount of money will be designated to the procurement of, oxygen and bed spaces and things of that sort. But we'll never be able to get to that if, again, and I have to emphasize this point, if we do not win the fight against corruption. And I know you're going to ask me the question against corruption. So when you hear the president talk about we must win the fight against corruption, we have to move money from the thieves in Lusaka to places where money is needed, where the people live. This is exactly what we're talking about. I've consistently said, and we used to come here, not just on this platform, but several other platforms across the country, telling the people that corruption in Zambia has consistently been, and for many years, been a $3 billion dollars per annum problem. That is a huge amount of money. And the president now is saying, no more of that. Whether it's in the way that public procurement is done, no more of that. We need to save money and be able to make vaccines available to our people. We need to be able to save money and be able to make oxygen available to our people. We need to be able to save money and make those bed spaces available, to our people.
What is the current situation in terms of the bed spaces we just been talking about?
All right, let him finish, then I'll come back.
And I won't be able to tell you what the current bed space capacity is, but I think one only would have to walk through a typical ward in our hospitals, and I think the picture is as dreadful as it can get. And we need to make progress on that. So the point I was making is that in order for us to be able to beef up capacity to get enough vaccine stocks in, and not relying on handouts, much as we are grateful for that, enough for us to be able to have enough oxygen capacity, enough for us to have enough bed space capacity, in order for us to be able to put more nurses and doctors on the job to be able to respond to patients' needs, enough capacity for us to be able to equip our frontline personnel with protective equipment, so that they are not acting as carriers and spreading disease. We have to win the fight against corruption. So when people ask the president's commitment to the fight against corruption, oh boy, I can tell you, he is as committed as ever to win that fight against corruption, and we will win it. Because this is a president who will tell you, meetings, we are there for meetings. We're not there to do shopping, we're not there to have expensive dinners, we're not there to do boat cruises and everything there. We're strictly there for businesses. He is eager to save the last kwacha and ingwe, so that there's medicines in hospitals, so that the next child can go to school. So all of those things that you hear him talk about, he walks the talk in those grounds in State House. He will remind you every day that we are there for the people. We are not there to enrich ourselves or to buy expensive cars and things like that. It is for the people. So everything that the president does, every decision which this administration takes, it is for and entirely in the interest of the Zambian people.
So,
Doc, you wanted to address that issue.
Let me come to that issue. And I think before I get to it, Innocent, I need to just bring to the attention of the viewers a little bit of a scenario of what COVID does.
Please.
Because this is very important tied to the fight for corruption he's talking about, the need for us as a country to have resources. When a patient is hit by coronavirus in its severest form, the person is struggling to breathe. You are in the open air, it's like you are submerged underwater because your lungs are loaded with these sticky mucoid secretions to a point that the air is failing to penetrate. Now, to keep a person like that alive, you don't need simple oxygen. You need what you call high flow oxygen, which is literally pushing its way into the lungs of the person so that they can pick some, and their saturation will still be very, very weak. All right? And we've seen patients who have been in that situation for 2 months. Do you know how much oxygen in volume that is? It is a lot of oxygen. It's the kind of oxygen on one patient a month in a condition like that. You will use it to operate on 1,000 other patients in these operations, which you do for 30 minutes, for 1 hour, you know. So COVID is an expensive condition, not just on the oxygen, because this one person will occupy a bed for 2 months. That bed would have been, under normal condition, that bed would have been occupied by so many other patients because we only have so many beds. You talked about bed space. Now, to attend to that COVID patient, the nurses and the doctors, you've seen the way they would have to dress, like they're going to the moon. And those things, you wear it once, after that you have to go throw it away and get a new one. And those gallant frontliners, at the height of the COVID outbreak, did you know that they are not going home? They are staying in the hospital for 2 solid weeks so that you minimize this movement, and then another group comes in. I'm trying to highlight the cost factor of dealing with a COVID patient. And by the way, it has been shown, even in this country, that individuals who end up with severe disease and needing oxygenation and intensive care, currently under the time where vaccines are available, are predominantly individuals who are not vaccinated. So to remain unvaccinated willingly is such a big threat. Not only to yourself, but to the entire economy of the country. I think we need to make this abundantly clear to people that when you are vaccinated, you literally are not saving yourselves and the people around you, you are saving the whole country. Because the government is obliged to take care of you when you are sick. Okay? So, the question of bed spaces is that what tends to happen, because when COVID goes away, these health facilities are used as general health facilities. What is being done in the current strategy is to identify primary response facilities, which are designated COVID centers. I think they are obvious, you know them, Levi, Mainasoko, and others. Now, in each province, we have identified key institutions that are being prepared to be the response center for COVID. Now we have the front line tier. Should that be overcome, then there is a secondary line of facilities. I think the key issue is to prepare sufficiently in these facilities such that the health workers are already trained. By the way, remember, we lost also a lot of healthcare workers because of ill preparation against COVID, which we hope should it come
that was
again.
Going to be my next question, to find out whether we have already replaced those human resources that we lost as a country.
Already replaced?
Are we likely
no.
to employ more?
We are likely going to not. We are likely. The new administration has committed to hiring more essential workers,
How long
including
will that, because COVID
nurses.
is
COVID is here already, but you know that this government, you are saying there, this is 2 months in office and still operating under a budget from the previous regime. So in its budget, the new government has taken care of some of these preparations. But I wanted to say that concerning oxygen, because you see, the part that the public doesn't see in our work is the preparation, very serious preparation being done to mitigate. Because we are not, what is very visible is our vaccine activity. But we are also preparing, should we get patients coming with COVID, how are we going to take care of them? Remember, we did run out of bed space. We did run out of oxygen. We got to a point where our folks was not producing enough oxygen to meet the demand at the peak of COVID. So now, part of our strategy in the meantime is to make sure that these big facilities are infitted with oxygen producing plants, plants that will produce sufficient high flow oxygen should we get the need for that. And so each province, the plans currently are that each provincial center will have at least one big facility that must have a plant to produce sufficient high flow oxygen. Highly dense cities like Lusaka, there are plans to have at least 3 of those. On the Copper Belt, again, several of them. That and then in the more sparse of our provinces, at least 1 in each provincial center. So that at least, should you get to that point, no patient should die because the government failed to keep them alive on oxygen.
And let me just draw parallels as well, because you talked about COVID and the budget as well, because really what the Zambian people should expect is a budget that is going to be centered around the needs of ordinary people, a budget that is going to sow the seeds of prosperity for the future. So, for example, you expect that even in the context of COVID, the president has been very clear that we need to shift the balance of resources. This is something that we talked about over the course of the campaign period, and now it is about to be actualized. We are going to move the balance of resources away from central government, where the president always, and rightly so, says money was being stolen by a small group of individuals. Literally, all the big corruption scandals were happening here in Lusaka, because this is where all the money was concentrated, and this is where all the big transactions ridden with corruption were taking place here. And now the president is saying, as a matter of reorganizing the budget and delivering on the promise of responding to the basics of ordinary people in the communities where they live, we need to shift the balance of resources away from central government to the communities where our people are, in constituencies. This is why you're going to see a whole new different model of constituency development fund, because even at the height of COVID, if we should get there, the people in the constituencies where they are, they will be able to decide, because monies will be made available to them. They'll be able to decide, we need more bed spaces in our clinics, we need oxygen, we need maybe an extra hand in the in the role of a nurse or a doctor. You cannot have rapid and effective community response mechanisms, whether in the area of health, education, social protection, or anything else, if you do not support them the right way. The president wants jobs to be created in the communities where people live, but money has to be pumped there. The president wants every child to have a desk where to sit, a roof over their classroom where they are. But all of that cannot happen if you allow a small group of individuals in Lusaka to be stealing public money. So the president is saying, as part of delivering on the promise of taking development closer to the people, and as per what we envision will happen in the budget to be presented, resources will be moved closer to where the people are, so that we can speed up and pace up on how communities respond to the many challenges which they face, including responding to healthcare challenges, responding to entrepreneurship support challenge, education support challenges, and so on and so forth. All of that will be shifted and brought closer to the communities where our people live.
Right. Furthermore, Mr. Bwalya, you've already crossed now to talking about the budget, which we expect
so I was just giving you a preview of what to expect.
So
we're not here to answer intricate questions about the budget, but what I can tell you in the Zambian people is that you can expect a people-centered budget, a forward-looking budget, a budget that is going to be sowing seeds for prosperity, for the future. You're not going to see a budget that is going to be all about spending. It is going to be about spending for investment purposes, so that you know that wherever you spend, you're planting a seed which is going to bear fruit, not just for you, but for our children, in years to come. So it's going to be a people-centered budget. I touched on the aspect of decentralization because this is and has been one of the key expectations, not just on the part of the president, but this is a commitment that we made to the Zambian people that we are going to give you back your money so that you can decide to spend that money on the things that matter to you as communities, as constituencies. Yeah.
Actually, my question is in line with your submission. I want to find out from you, what is the president's position with regards to the budget that will be unveiled in the next, should be 48 hours from now or less than that. What kind of a budget are we likely to have? Will this be a UPND budget, or it will be a PF budget with a few touches?
Listen,
I ask this question because I'm sure you are a follower of the public discussion, including Doc himself. I'm always the president himself.
Because these days we don't follow social media much, so we don't know what you're talking about.
You have to follow because we're now, at Prot 1, of course, so you need to follow the conversation in public domain. And including the president, I think he follows these debates. He has confessed in several times that he follows these debates that is going on. Now, we've had some seemingly contradictions, where this minister comes and no, this is going to be a PF budget with only a few touches, here and there, and then we proceed. Again, the president comes and wait for our budget to come. He's going to address some or if not all, the concerns that you have.
Colleagues, let me make this.
A UPND budget.
Let me make this clear. First of all, the president has been very clear and categorical in saying that this is the people's government. It is not a UPND government. It is not a PF government. This government is for the people of Zambia, whether they are UPND or PF or non-aligned. The people who delivered an election, this election victory, were not just the UPND. We have people who used to wear green colors, but they voted for this president. We have people who were non-aligned and completely indifferent about the culture of politics. But because politics touch the fabric of who we are as a country, they voted for this president. So just as this election victory was a Zambian election victory, the president and this administration has been very clear that this budget will be a people's budget. This is why when the president says, our decentralization agenda, and I keep going on about this issue because it clearly demonstrates the intention, the good intention of this president and the administration to take development to every corner of this country, irrespective of where these people are or how they voted, because it does. The president is saying the same amount of money that is going to take to a region in Southern Province is the same amount of money that is going to take to a region in Wapula Province. Even where they did not vote for him, they will get that money because they too are Zambians. Now, these are the intentions of a president who is working for all Zambians and not acting on partisan interest. So the budget that is going to be delivered, don't even designate it a UPND budget or anything else. This is going to be a people's budget because it has been designed and it will be delivered and implemented for the sole purpose of lifting the lives of our people.
Making it we're using.
Well, the terminologies have to be
PF's budget or UPND's budget, because if it was the people's budget, why should people describe the previous budget or the current budget as the patriotic front budget?
So I'll put it into context. So I'll put it into
that you take a full responsibility.
So I will put it.
People
so I'll put it into.
Say we want jobs.
Absolutely.
We're going to say it's there in the budget.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So I'll put it into context for you.
Sure.
Right now, our people want, and they do indeed deserve to have more money into their constituencies.
Exactly.
But that money was not budgeted for under the current budget cycle where we are.
Right.
So they could say that they want more money into their constituencies, but the current budget cycle does not allow for that. And we're saying we're a government of laws. We're not just going to usurp an existing budget simply because we need to fulfill our ambitions on the basis of the commitments that we made. The president has been saying to the Zambian people, let's be extra patient. We only have a few months before a budget delivered by this new administration with the intention of delivering on the various commitments that we made for the Zambian people kicks in at the turn of this year and ushering in of 2022. So the budget that we see and will be delivered over the course of the next 2 days, which is on Friday, that is now the budget which we are saying will reflect and fully embody and encapsulate the aspirations of the Zambian people for better healthcare, better social security support, better support for agriculture. Already we have been told, where previously people used to get 3 bags of fertilizer, this administration, the president has made it very clear that those bags will be increased to 6, and further that farmers now will be able to get an extra 10 kg of seed. That is something that never used to happen. Right now, that is difficult to deliver. Might be difficult to deliver because maybe it wasn't properly budgeted for. But now we're saying we have an opportunity to actualize on that commitment, to our farmers. So the budget that will be presented now gives us an opportunity as a new administration to look the Zambian people in the eye and say, we understand your struggles over the past 10 years. We understand your fears at household level. We understand all of that. And now we are going to begin sowing those seeds of prosperity for the future. The Zambian people now must believe that every decision that is going to be undertaken as part and parcel of the budget that is going to be delivered, it is not just for the year 2022, but it sets the tone and basis for us to build a better country, 2023, 2024, 2025, so that in 2026, whatever happens, we would have laid a solid base and foundation for this country to go even to greater heights in terms of social and economic development.
Right. Let me involve in Doc once again. I know that
I thought by now we should be concluding. Where's the director of programs?
We still have more time. Let's hear from Doc. Doc, I know that this is a budget that really for you, you are anticipating to help really, eradicate the challenges that the people of Zambia are facing in terms of the COVID-19. I don't want you to speak on behalf of the Minister of Health, but just the COVID component as well. What assurance would you give to the people of Zambia with regards to the budget that is going to be presented by the Minister of Finance in terms of meeting the aspirations of you and the President in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, so it is actually not in my place to speak about the budget before it is announced. I just want to make that clear. But what I do understand and know for sure is that there is going to be sufficient provisions for the tasks that we have at hand. Because on one hand, we are being given a mandate to say, make sure you do X, Y, Z to mitigate against COVID. On the other hand, appropriate resources have to be channeled towards that cause. And I think to that extent, I would say I'm fairly comfortable that you know, they say that where there's a will, there's always a way. And I think we have a very clear will in this instance. What I would rather focus on, though, Innocent, is to say that tomorrow, following the national launch that the President pushed for relaunch for vaccination, we've cascaded that to the provinces. It's going on. Tomorrow we are launching vaccination campaigns among inmates and the staff that serve inmates in correctional facilities. So in Mukobeko Maximum Prison tomorrow morning, to flag off that activity so that we can make sure that our officers that take care of, you know, the conditions in our prisons are not that comfortable. And if you have an infectious disease like COVID in there, it will ravage the people. And so those people do need to be protected as well. And particularly giving them attention because they don't have the same liberties that you and I have. Nangu tulemeka. Liberties. So we are taking the program and the campaign to the correctional facilities, and again back to the point I made, there is enough vaccine for every prisoner, and these vaccines are going to be taken to them, and this campaign is not just going to be launched at Mukobeko and it ends there. You are going to have healthcare workers and correctional service teams work through all the prisons countrywide. Remember, I told you there is vaccine everywhere in this country. So in the coming week, watch that space. There's going to be activity around vaccinating inmates and correctional service staff. And that said, we are working on parallel plans. Remember, we are at war and we need multiple strategies to make sure that the people are protected, and we are looking to utilize all the structures, our traditional leadership structures. We want to take vaccination campaigns into the chiefdoms. We want to take vaccination campaigns into the churches, where we get people gathering, where we have structures. Remember, every leadership structure has got to take up the role and get its followers or congregants or whatever category that is vaccinated. It's a list that everybody must do.
Right. Mr. Bwalya, I know that you were anticipating to be asked the question regarding the fight against corruption. I will insist to ask this question, reason being that if we are living in a country full of corruption, where public resources are being stolen or abused, raped, then we are at risk. The fight against COVID-19 that Doc here is talking about will not be achieved. You know, and what is the president saying with regards to fighting corruption? First of all, we need to appreciate as a country his magnanimity in terms of pronouncing the fight against corruption. That can't be taken away from him. He's maintained his stance. But remember, there are other people out there that feels that this crusade against corruption is nothing but a witch hunt on the opponents.
So let me be very clear, as much as the president himself has been.
Yeah.
No one will steal from the Zambian people and get away with it. No one. That's a promise which the president has made, and the Zambian people can absolutely believe. And that all those who previously were stealing from the Zambian people, I don't want to say that they will pay heavily for it, but that is owed to the Zambian people. We are saying that Zambia has always been a country of laws, and we are going to remain a country of laws, and the laws of this country will be enforced against those who've been stealing from this country and its people. The president has been very clear, and no one should misunderstand the president's stance and intention in and around the fight against corruption, because his intention and vision against against the rampant theft of public resources remains unwavering. The need for us to win the fight against corruption in this country is at the heart and center for us being able to provide decent healthcare, education, social security support for agriculture. It cuts all across. So we must win it. But we also must be quick to emphasize that for us to win the fight against corruption, we must strengthen the capacity and resilience of our public institutions that are tasked to deal with this massive problem. So we need to beef up staffing levels. We need to beef up the technical capacities of our men and women who work in these various institutions. We have to give them the right kind of independence and autonomy to be able to function without them having to feel like they have to respond to a political hand of some sort. And this is why it's laughable, and the Zambian people should not pay attention to it. When people cry that this is a witch hunt, law enforcement agencies have a mandate to respond to these injuries that have been caused against the Zambian people. They must and they will act independently. How they decide to deal with one case of corruption and another, that is entirely a matter for them. It is not a matter for the president. It is not a matter for the administration. For us, it is just to make sure that we retain the independence to function to these law enforcement agencies. We support them the right way in terms of staffing levels, technical capacity improvements, and things of that sort. How they do and execute their mandate is entirely up to them.
Mr. Bwalya, some people are saying the current people or senior leaders we have at our investigative wings, they're not helping this country. Hence, they are only sabotaging the fight against corruption.
Don't focus on the people.
And
focus on the institutions.
Some of the voices that are coming out is just today, one of your predecessor, Amos Chanda, who had his house raided by the Drug Enforcement Commission or officials claiming to be officials from the deck, because I say purported or claims, because according to him, he's saying they refused to produce their IDs to be identified. Is that the kind of strategies of use now as the
so I will put it to you, and again I will say it. Focus on the institutions, not on the people, because today people are saying those who occupy those offices are PF people. Okay, supposing you're right,
and you've heard that.
Today you change them, you put in supposed UPND people. The same UPND people now, they start protecting thieves within the UPND. Government changes, and then someone will be saying, no, take them out because they're UPND. They're not our people. The principle is this. We have to strengthen the quality of our institutions. This is the biggest problem. So everything the president is doing is aimed at restoring the credibility of our public institutions so that it no longer should matter who is occupying office in those institutions, whether it's Innocent, whether it's Bwalya, whether it's Dr. Chilengi. We should all must be compelled to act in the interest of this country and our people. Institutions, institutions, institutions. Before you even start thinking, no, that one must go, that one must go, let us focus on reforming these critical institutions. Are they sitting the right way? Are they organized the right way, so that no single individual working for these institutions can rise above this institution and override its mandate? Start protecting criminals when the structure of institutions and how they should function is all very clear. So institutions, institutions, institutions. And this is what I meant when I said every decision the president and this administration is making, make no mistake about it, it is for the benefit of this country. We are sowing seeds of prosperity. We are not here for vendettas. We are here to govern. And the president will take every decision that is necessary to sow the seeds of prosperity for the future, so that the SEC that you are going to have tomorrow will be credible enough to prosecute those in the PF, credible enough to prosecute those in the UPND, those in the FDD, those in the MMD, and those who are not politically affiliated. As long as you infringe and injure the spirit of the Zambian laws and you go stealing from the Zambian people, they will come after you. But we have to strengthen the character and the credibility of these institutions. So again, I'm going to say, don't focus on the individuals, focus on the institutions, institutions.
Let me bring in Doc, the pending question to you, because in your preamble you did mention that the purpose of the trip to Northern Province by the President was indeed to go and lay wreaths on the burial site of Simon Mwanzikapo, among others, as a symbol of the contribution that our forefathers really, gave us during the struggle for independence. But again, in your quest to unite this country, Mr. Bwalya, I think you have seen the debate going on where people are saying the president went to Northern Province and therefore, without paying a courtesy call to the chief, the senior chief, Chitemukulu, he bypassed him. What kind of unit are you talking about, if at all your house or your office cannot unite with Chief Chitemukulu? I bring this question because, remember, there's been some seemingly backlash between the president back in the opposition and, the Mwine Lubemba. Have those issues or those seemingly misunderstandings been harmonized now? Or was it the reason why the president decided to bypass the chief? That question opened. It will be your closing remarks. Let me bring in Doc. Doc, your question will be, the fight against corruption, like I did mention, is something that we need to come together and find the lasting solution. How much do you hate corruption as the COVID advisor to the president? And how much do you think corruption really, if left unchecked, it will disadvantage the fight or sabotage the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you, Innocent, for the question. Actually, I think it is a very good question. And I think it is a good question because from where I'm sitting, firstly, I understand that our health system is fragile, and fragile because our economy is not strong, and therefore there are not enough resources as there should be in a health system. Now, I think that the duty we have is a bit different from other areas of discipline. Talk about our friends either in the mining or agro sector, where something goes wrong, they will not harvest enough crop or they will not mine enough copper. In my case, something goes wrong and, Innocent, you are my patient, you die. Okay? And I'm using very simplistic examples here. So, if in a situation where I'm supposed to have X number of vaccines to vaccinate a given number of people, it so happens that I can't have X number of vaccines, I'll have Y number of vaccines. And the reason is that there isn't enough money. And there isn't enough money because somebody has unduly taken what is not theirs, what is supposed to be for my patient. What I am faced with on the front line is a serious incapacitation. And this is an incapacitation of life and death activities. And so, there is no explaining the extent to which people like myself need to abhor corruption. In fact, if there is a sector that is most hit as a consequence of corruption, is the health sector. Because the health sector is one sector where we spend a lot because we have to save lives. And most of the things that we need, you really don't have the luxury to say, can we get this tomorrow or the other day? Because people die. And so if a person is going to die because somebody else took away from what we would have had, I think it's a no-brainer. It makes us incensed, and it makes us upset, because it's gonna double our work. Now, these things look distant, but if you are going to take away resources, and typically corrupt people are greedy individuals. In fact, typically the individuals who already have enough, and then they will take so much more from others. And what they take, they are not even typically using it for anything reasonable. But on the other hand, it's a question of a child surviving. It's a question of a person having oxygen to breathe. Or indeed, it's a question of us having enough vaccines to protect people. It doesn't end there, Innocent. It doubles our work. It doubles our work if, because we don't have enough tools or enough consumables, people get exposed to disease. Remember, I was talking about at the height of the COVID, what was happening to the healthcare workers. 2 weeks camping in the health facility. Why? Because the conditions demand that. Doctors and nurses, unfortunately, don't have the luxury of saying, it's time to knock off, we'll continue tomorrow. They don't have that luxury. As long as they are patients, there has to be continuity of care. So anything that takes away from that, I think that it's a direct assault at ourselves. And so we cheer a government and a leadership that wants to stop that. We understand we are already poor, but don't make us poorer.
Mr. Bwalya, I hope you can summarize that question of mine, just with maybe 2 minutes.
No, I just wanted to ask you a question. You're a journalist. Have you seen a complaint from the Bembaro establishment?
At times you cannot see...
This has been going on. I've seen the discussion, and I can tell you from where I'm sitting that it's a lot of nonsense. But I'm going to ask you, for purposes of checking the facts, have you seen a complaint from the Bembaro establishment?
At the moment, I think there is no...
It's because there isn't. It's because there isn't. And let me conclude.
Prior to the general elections, there was a complaint from the Chief Chitimkulu, in which he said, I remember very well, in which he said there was a time in which he decided not to attend to President Hakainde Hichilema back in the opposition. Reason being that there were some allegations that he did not distance himself from certain, backlash that had happened between him and together with the NDC leader, Honorable Kambwili, back then, previous to the elections. Where are we now?
Yeah, I'm not going to discuss historical issues, but what I can tell you is that the thrust of this president and this administration, the same way that I've indicated that he's a president for all Zambians, and that includes respect for our various traditional leaders and the various traditional establishments they preside on. That position has been made very clear. The president has indicated his desire to work with traditional leaders and our various peoples to make sure that we deliver on the promise of taking development to where these people are. The president has also made it very clear that he will work with our traditional leaders, supports them the best way that this government can, both during their reign and obviously after their reign. There's a whole range of discussions that are taking place in the background aimed at supporting our various royal highnesses and the traditional establishments they preside over, and also uplifting the general welfare of all our peoples across all royal establishments. So we'll not spend time discussing non-existent rifts. If people want to concoct stories, they're very free to concoct stories. It's a new democratic dispensation. No one is going to come and arrest you. You are free, but we'll prefer to discuss facts, but also assure you, the Zambian people, that we are creating a country for all Zambians, for every Zambian.
With freedoms.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Bwalya, allow me to appreciate you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
We hope to continue engaging each other with some of these burning questions that the people of Zambia have. Together with the doc, we wish you the best as you continue fighting against the COVID-19 as well as the issues due with corruption.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, to you, the people of Zambia, like I always say, thank you so much for watching. This program, of course, is made possible because of your contribution, and also my producer, Maptopiri, thank you so much. Up next is the news with Jesse. Allow me to say, may God bless you, and may God bless Zambia. Good night.